Welcome everyone to our new episode of Community Connection. We are so excited. I am one of your hosts, Victoria Alercia Casella. I'm a licensed professional counselor with my private practice in Easton, PA. And my co-host, Mark, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you, Vicki. It's good to be here. Mark Kenny, and I'm the director of the Clinical and Counseling Psychology program for Chestnut Hill College at our DeSales University campus. Glad to be here this evening and working with Vicki in this new format.
Wonderful. And our guest, which I kind of feel like this is a little bit of a reunion, right, Mark? So Chris and I both attended the program through Chestnut Hill College. So Chris Jacob, welcome. Introduce yourself for our viewers.
Well, thank you for having me today. My name is Chris Jacob. I am the Associate Director for an organization called Treatment Trends. We are a drug and alcohol treatment provider, providing services along the entire treatment and recovery continuum, and our services are largely based out of Allentown. Thank you again for having me.
Yeah, we're excited. I feel like this is definitely the topic that we're going to be discussing today. COVID-19's impact on substance use disorder or addiction treatment and recovery communities. That we need to hear that. Like, I think our community definitely needs to hear more about this and what supports are out there. It's becoming difficult for a lot of people. So I just quickly want to share a disclaimer that we always share at the beginning of our show, that if anyone who's viewing this is severely struggling with any mental health issues, we strongly encourage you to reach out to your therapist, doctor, caseworker, whatever supports are in your system. Of course, if it's an emergency, you can contact Crisis 610-252-9060. Go to the hospital or the crisis text line at 741-741. I don't know if either of you have any other emergency numbers to add to that list.
No, I think you did a good
job.
Those
are the main ones?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I guess let's start off. So Chris, what kind of COVID-19 protocols are treatment facilities implementing right now?
It's been quite a challenge for treatment facilities, and we regularly have different phone calls and Zoom meetings and whatnot with providers throughout the state to hear what everyone's doing. A lot of this has settled on a lot of making social distancing a priority within facilities. Residential facilities some of the protocols they are cutting census bed capacity from anywhere to 40 to 60% of what they would normally put in a facility, so that they could maintain appropriate bedding rooms to ensure that in individuals, rooms that have bunks, for instance, making sure that bunks are at least 6 feet apart, and that if individuals are sharing bunks, that they're sleeping head to foot to minimize some risk. Groups, running much smaller groups within the facility so that they can assure that there's at least 6 feet and less than 10. Masks, regular temperature checks throughout the day, at least twice a day. Cleaning, disinfecting at least 3 to 5 times, whereas it would normally be 1 to 2 times in a residential facility. Within outpatient programs, most of it's gone telehealth at this point. The protocols have gone to, we offer, for instance, we're offering some staffing in our outpatient, but the majority of individuals, so that if someone can't access telehealth or whatnot, but the majority of individuals, a level of care assessments, individual and groups are all happening telehealth-wise.
I think that's great. I mean, I think now more than ever, we have to be able to be as flexible as we possibly can, understanding everyone's in a different situation, but still be able to be here to offer the support, in any way possible. So that's great to hear that.
And Chris, how are the treatment services being impacted?
Oh, wow. At this point, it's been a significant challenge. A lot of facilities are not equipped to deal with this. Just everything from physical locations, not having the ability to set up quarantine areas, isolation areas. So that's been a big challenge for facilities trying to figure things like that out. Staffing. I know we had two positive cases, residents in one of our facilities. And luckily that was it. And we were able to isolate, and we had an isolation unit set up. But what it did impact is about 16 staff members in this facility had to be quarantined then. Our medical director had to quarantine them for 2 weeks. So just that shortage of staffing, beyond the exposure part, the childcare part, and this isn't just unique to our field, but the fact that a lot of our facilities are struggling with people who for other reasons beyond just exposure are unable to work and come in. And it's a challenge in residential facilities. We don't have the luxury. We need 24/7 care. So that's been a huge impact. The biggest, I would say, at this point.
So what does access to treatment look like right now?
Again, the problem being beds capacities have been cut for residential. So access, while you could still access most outpatient providers where level of care assessments would begin the treatment process for whatever level, they're still doing their thing. Most telehealth assessments. But you are seeing a struggle finding beds. So beds are becoming, wait times are becoming greater. So that's been the biggest challenge access-wise. And then other unintended consequences, already underserved populations. For example, the Spanish-speaking population, I'll use that as one example. There's not much programming out there for Spanish-speaking. There's one true Spanish-speaking program in the state. Other programs just kind of try to piece it together when they have Spanish-speaking bilingual counselors. So they become the odd man or woman out at this point because it just becomes more difficult to serve the underserved populations when you're choosing how you're going to go ahead. A lot of facilities are unfortunately eliminating individuals that have those challenges just because of the capacity issues that we're currently experiencing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, how are what kind of issues are the treatment programs facing then?
Again, staffing being a huge one at this point. Being able to keep people working for different reasons. PPE equipment has been difficult, to say the least, to come by. I know our program, wherever it's just kind of by piecing it together. We've been fortunate. We've had different volunteers, networks that have been making masks for us and donating them. I had a conference with Lehigh Valley Health Network about another program we're doing together today, and they talked about donating maybe 200 to 300 masks to us that have been made. But the PPE equipment has been a significant struggle at this point.
And how is the state or the county, had any of those external resources been helpful? Any of this funding that's, the CARES Act and things like this, has any kind of funding from outside been of any?
Well, our organization, we've been very fortunate that in the fact that we were able to take advantage of the Paycheck Protection Program. So we were one of the first to get in, and it's to get one of our loans in the first round. So that's been instrumental in helping us. But beyond that, it's been huge. Beyond that, the managed care organizations have stepped up. We deal mostly with I'm sorry, you may hear in the background. We deal with managed care organizations, such as if you've heard of Magellan Behavioral Health or CCBH. So these managed care organizations that fund programs like ours have stepped up and either given payouts based on census, bed capacities from a year ago, or have just increased the rates, given 10 to 15% rate increases across the board for our per diems in our residential facilities. So there's been different factors like that have helped.
Good, that's great. So how are clients processing being in the residential treatment while family and loved ones are facing like all this uncertainty in the community?
That has been a challenge to say the least. Family members, and it's gotten better, just like everything else with this. And as we've all become a little more accustomed to it and able to deal with it, it's trickled down to the clients. But when this initially became it really hit us, and everyone started feeling that instant impact back in, middle to late March, early April. And when we had our 2 positive cases in the first week of April, it was a crisis, to say the least. I don't normally work in our facility, as far as not on the front lines. I work in an administrative aspect, not so much a clinical aspect, but I felt compelled to go onto the front lines and work clinically in one of our residential programs, because clients were just struggling. There was a lot of crisis.
Yeah.
We had a lot of clients who ran against their better judgment, because they were worried, didn't know what to do and what was happening with their loved ones out there. But as we were able to adapt, process with them, we just were offering nonstop groups, small groups with them, allowing them more access to speak to their loved ones, regular phone calls, multiple phone calls a day, multiple times a week. And that's abnormal. We limit phone calls in residential treatment. We don't want that to become a barrier for clients, a distraction. But so we've had to do some of these things to help them feel a little more secure about not only their place in the facility, but what's happening with their family members. But that has been quite a struggle, to say the least.
That's great. I think crisis is the key word. I mean, as everyone's talking about just trying to stay healthy in terms of not getting the virus, but I think for those of us who work in the mental health field, we see that part of the concern of the pandemic, the mental health issues that are coming up, not so much the physical issues that are coming up. And I think many people have found themselves probably close to or very much in some type of crisis situation because of all the uncertainty. But that's great that once again, your facilities are showing flexibility and concern, or, like, what do our clients really need right now? What will really benefit them? Because as we all know, like, our basic needs, like, we need to be in the best, calm, healthiest place possible in order to treat then like the major issues, So it sounds like you guys were really trying to consider what really mattered to them in those moments, so then they continue their treatment the best way they can.
That well said. And that became, so our program, there was a lot of struggle in the beginning. I'll tell you, we did not do it perfectly, or I'll even take it a step further and say, out the gate, we didn't do it very well, because we were still trying to adhere to program norms and accountability. And a lot of it's designed to curb that flexibility you need in a moment like this. So it took us a moment to adjust, but once the staff realized that, hey, these times call for unique measures and unprecedented access to the outside world, it brought the clients back to a place where they respected our flexibility and care for what they were feeling, and they became even more invested in their treatment at that point.
You were building rapport by considering their needs that they really wanted. You built that rapport. That's really great. And you know what? It would be awesome if we were all given some type of handbook of how to survive COVID-19. But when you're saying like you guys were kind of like a mess, honestly, I don't know one person who was like, oh, pandemic, I got this. Like, I know how to handle this. I mean, you do have to be flexible and kind of roll with it and figure out, like, all right, it's a new norm. We're gonna get through this. Yeah.
You're right, and that's and yes, that's not was our we got this at that point. But now I have to tell you, you experience it. You have a couple positive cases, and you get through it and realize it's not the end of the world, and everyone will come through it okay and persevere and accept it. It's not even a part of we don't, when we're talking and going through our regular staff meetings day to day, multiple times a day, we're not talking about coronavirus. We're at this point, we're not talking about what are we going to do if this happens, or what new protocol do we have to implement, or what are we missing. We're going about our business. We're dealing with true therapeutic issues, and that just has become something that we do have some level of a playbook now, and
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
that's
amazing
awesome.
how quickly that script flipped.
Right. I have two questions for you, Chris. One's from your clinical hat, and the other one's from your administrative hat. So, listening to webinars myself and not being an expert in this area, so that's the reason I'm asking this question. Vicki raised the great point about social disconnection being a concern in the community around the pandemic. And then the other is people being re-traumatized. So we know that people in co-occurring disorder, substance abuse disorders, usually there's an intersection between that and trauma. So have you noticed that in your client population, that their own personal trauma now intersecting with the trauma that's occurring in the crisis in the greater community?
Yeah, great point, and absolutely for just the experience of substance use disorder as a traumatic effect in itself usually feeds off of one traumatic experience that has underlying traumatic experience. But this was a traumatic experience in itself for them that fed off some of the self-defeating behaviors that they already had and beliefs of, behind why and what they have to gain from treatment. So when this hit, basically when clients are in residential, they're at a place of, working toward ambivalence. So they are heavy with reservations as it stands. So when this hit, it was another self-defeating thought of what are we doing here when our family's out there? We're letting them down. So from that scope, there was that. But then there was also real life happening and them feeling really helpless because all that unprecedented access allowed them access to stuff that was happening, traumatic things. One person who actually one of our positive cases, I know I'm going off all over here, but
It's okay. We're following you.
But one of the actual positive cases in our facility, his uncle, as he's already dealing with that in isolation, gets the news his uncle died while in treatment, who was basically his father, like his father, was the father figure. But things like this and this unprecedented access, giving them access to information like that, that became a whole nother level of trauma that we had to peel through and deal with and really be responsive to in the type of programming and groups we were doing. And because we were limited, really figuring out how do we utilize their peers in there to be the ongoing support, because we were our therapeutic tools and clinical staff members were stretched, to say the least. So figuring out how to get the clients and peers to be additional supports for them in situations like that.
And my real quick question administratively is that, even, and working in the higher ed world, there's conversations about how this is kind of changing people's thoughts and practices going forward. So you were mentioning the flexibility and some of the changes that you've made. Do you, from your perspective, do you see any trends continuing into the future? Will treatment be changed, practices or protocols, because of your experiences through this pandemic?
Sure. Yeah, I do believe so. From an outpatient level and community-based level, I do think that telehealth is here to stay. I don't, as we talk about and talk about potentials for reinfections or another spike down the road, and or maybe it's just the leveling out before it spikes and not actually going away. I mean, these are real considerations that programs are having about, hey, what if this is working, everyone's become acclimated to it, why stop it now? Why create any more risk? Let's just keep it going. And on the same token, I do believe you'll see people not fill their bed capacities, residentials, programs like ourselves. I do believe you'll see them not operate at 100% capacity in preparation for anything that could occur like this, a sudden spike again, or so things like that at very minimum you will see. Not as you may see administrative working from home more often or whatnot, but because we're a direct service base, that's not going to enter our world per se, more so outside of the telehealth stuff on the community base.
I see. Okay.
Yes.
So if there's viewers who are watching this and they are concerned with whatever consumption, addiction, things that they're struggling with, or someone that they know who's struggling with some sort of substance use or addiction, what would be some of like the steps that they can take, whether they are open to the idea of going into a residential and going down that process, or just, how can I manage this from home without having to leave to go inpatient?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities to access treatment at this point because we've been impacted so significantly. It doesn't mean that things have gone away. So still contacting your Northampton or Lehigh County drug and alcohol abuse services. They can direct you in the right place. But calling the traditional outpatient programs and intake units that we have between the counties, they're still doing it's still the conventional access to treatment. So they're still doing the type of assessments, just telehealth wise or phone call wise. So it's actually more convenient. And they're more flexible. Traditionally, a lot of programs, if they saw that you needed residential treatment, they would not be as open to doing outpatient. They felt that, you being in the wrong level of care is just as dangerous as no level of care. So they wouldn't often be willing to treat you in that respect. But they're more open to that now, knowing that there is less access to residential beds at this point. So you can still access treatment through conventional drug and alcohol treatment, outpatient programs in your community, through the counties. They all still exist.
That's a good point. Yeah, the flexibility should actually make people more willing to follow through with it, knowing that they can do it from the comfort of their own home. So that's great.
Right.
Any specific, like, outside of treatment trends, which in a minute I'm going to ask you to share your contact information, but any books, videos, support groups, like any other resources that you would recommend?
Sure. For those of us individuals who are in recovery, I should say, and you've subscribed to a particular fellowship without going into the anonymity of any fellowships, but if you've prescribed to a certain 12-step fellowship, if you look for their information on website, they're all offering Zoom meetings. So just like we are right now, or counseling is happening, support meetings are happening Zoom-wise as well, and they're really easily accessible. And a lot are finding it to be great because not only can you do Zoom meetings within this area, you can do them all over the world and be exposed to new and different people and hear different perspectives that you normally wouldn't have exposure to if we were just still recovering in our isolated communities here.
That's a very positive spin to that situation. I like that.
Yeah.
It's been one of the silver linings,
Sure.
We do have silver linings in crisis.
Yeah. Well, and working with you over the last 3 years with Rally in the Valley, that
Yes.
you're one of the co-founders of, and the recovery movement. How is the recovery community being impacted? And you started talking about some of the supports that are out there for the recovery community. So do you wanted to speak to the recovery
Sure.
community and say a few words?
That's been traumatic. What this has been traumatic in itself. First of all, Rally in the Valley would have been this weekend, Sunday the 17th. We've postponed it to 2021, very sadly. But obviously, it was the right decision, seeing where we're at right now. Could have never happened. But there is impact out there, and we are seeing alarming numbers of relapses and whatnot. As it is a great thing to do, and once people experience the Zoom meetings and fellowship through Zoom, they're enjoying it and embracing it. The problem is not enough for making that leap at this point, and they're choosing. Addiction breeds isolation. I mean, that is a tendency of the addictive thought process, is isolation. So give one more excuse to isolate, an addict is going to take it and run with it, and that's what's happening. And you're seeing high levels of relapses. There has been an alarming amount of deaths, and we've, what's gotten lost. We have an epidemic, but a pandemic trumps an epidemic, and so we're not talking about the addiction epidemic like we were leading up to this, but it's become the forgotten war, and it's still it's running rampant at this point. So,
can you briefly explain Rally in the Valley, like what it is for maybe our viewers who've never heard of it?
It is a it is my baby. I am one of the co-founders of it, and we're coming up on our 4th year. Rally in the Valley is a community recovery event. It's a call to all individuals, whether you are in recovery, contemplating recovery, or just the general community who is curious about recovery, or what's happening and what avenues may be available for them or loved ones. And it's a day of entertainment, music. We had a national headliner, a 90s alt band, still relevant today. Sister Hazel was going to be our headliner. Their lead singer is in recovery, so they wanted to do it. But it's all kinds of music, it's food, it's different family activities. There are different support, 12-step meetings and other types of presentations. We have health and wellness. We have providers there. We had over 80 providers from both the mental health and substance abuse and recovery, all of the continuums coming together to have over 80 providers there for individuals to see what resources are out there. It's just a great day to see and celebrate recovery and see how productive recovery could be, how motivating it could be, with a lot of great examples there that day. We bring people in from all over the state to attend it. It's been our first year. We did it 4 years ago. We had about 700 people. It was at Cedar Crest College. The second year it went to 1,500. At Cedar Crest last year, we moved it to the Steel Stacks in Bethlehem. We had about 5,000 people there.
Wow.
And yeah, and it's a totally free event.
That's amazing. So
totally.
Even though it's not going to be occurring this year, if someone does want to, keep up with that, with wanting to be involved, is there like a Facebook page or something where someone could follow what's being offered through that?
Yep, it is the parent the parent organization of Rally in the Valley is Synchronicity Recovery Foundation. So if you go to Sync Recovery, that's SYNC RECOVERY .org. That is the website, and it'll take you to Rally, plus all the other amazing things that Sync Recovery does to support the recovery community. That's just one aspect of what Sync does. They do a whole lot. And I'm not quite the social media person, so to tell you a Facebook, that's horrible.
It's okay. I mean,
I'm an anomaly. I have no
that's where
social
my
media.
mind goes, but using
But I guess,
a telephone, if there's a phone number, if anyone still uses a telephone,
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad to give my office phone number if anyone
Yes, please do. Share your contact information from Treatment Trends for us.
So my personal number, if anyone wanted to reach me, office number 610-4 to me in the administration would be 610-432-7690.
Okay.
We have our Center of Excellence, which is a community-based where individuals for many things can call if they need any we connect them with all kinds of services, whether it be level of care, you name it. They're case managers and certified recovery specialists. That phone number is 610-432-7693.
Okay.
Yep. And
fantastic. Mark, was there anything else that you wanted to add or ask Chris while we have him?
Well, the one thing I wanted to add was that it's what an honor for me and all of our instructors at our program to have two alumni who are so involved in the community, well-versed in the field, really demonstrating leadership. And I'm just in awe of the two of you. And I just wanted to sneak in that moment to say that, it's just wonderful to hear and be just a part of this conversation. And so just, I think this is what our program hopes to do is have people out there in the community doing all the good work that the two of you are doing in both your capacities. So I just wanted to take that moment to say that. So no, I don't have any further questions, but I'll turn it over to you, Vicki.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I appreciate that. Thank you. And I think it's what, from working the mental health field, I very much focus on the positive of seeing us coming together as a community. I mean, yes, there's a lot of negativity and fear and anxiety out there, but there's also a lot of unity, you know, and support and compassion. And I think now more than ever, it's really important to focus on those things that are happening like this, us coming together and just saying, hey, how can we help one another? How can we help our community in any way possible? So Chris, thank you so much for being with us today. So much good information. I'm very excited.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Mark, for your kind words. And your mentorship has played a big part in where I am today. So right back at you with the appreciation and pride.
I'm feeling lots of love. I was going to say, I'm feeling lots of love in this room. We're not all in the same room, so I'm feeling
virtual room.
Virtual room. Yes, yes.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to our viewers, and stay tuned for our next episode. We will be posting on social media our topic and our next community connection guest. Have a great evening.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.